Herut Israel, I think, is an excellent program that is affording opportunities for the Jewish community that has been on the peripheral for a long time. I'm speaking about Jews of African descent or African American Jewish communities that have been a part of the landscape in the United States for nearly 100 years now. And I think that they're reaching out to our community is very important. One, it says we know that you are here. We know that you are our brothers and our sisters. And it makes a lot of sense for our community, the Jews of African descent, here in the United States, to be very involved with Herut and supporting the programs that they are supporting that are going to bring our community further into the fold of what, let us say, normative Judaism, by inviting our young people to participate in Tailgate Israel, the young folks between 18 and 26, and then other programs, the Birthright program, and then our voices being added as voices of support for the state of Israel, which I think is extremely important. I think that the state of Israel has been mislabeled in many quarters as an apartheid state, which is absolutely wrong. They have been labeled as a racist state, as occurred at the Durban conference in Durban, South Africa many years ago, which I believe is absolutely wrong. I think that if you've never been to Israel, then you really don't see the actual equality of the citizenship and the makeup of Israeli citizenship. The Israeli community brought in our brothers and sisters en masse from Ethiopia, the Beit Yisrael. Today they number in the state of Israel well over 100,000. We have had Beit Yisrael members of the Knesset. We have had Beit Yisrael individuals who have served in the core of the going out and serving in consulates around the United States and around the world. And I think that there has been an enormous outreach by the Israeli government to Beit Yisrael and other Jews of color to include them within this broader structure. Another issue for me is the equation of Zionism with racism, which I think is an absolute misnomer. To be a Zionist, Zionism is an ideal. It's an ideal of peoplehood, and that peoplehood is attached to a land. It does not say to put anyone else off of their land, but it does say that we as Zionists are seeking our land. Zionism is not racism. Zionism is an ideal of peoplehood for the people of Israel. This week, we have just celebrated the Pesach, Passover, and we are now in the days of unleavened bread. So we call it the Feast of Freedom. The Feast of Freedom, where our people were freed from bondage in Egypt, and the state of Israel took a long time to come into existence, but it is here now, and it is our hope and our prayer that we can grow the support for the state of Israel within the African American Jewish community, but also on the continent of Africa itself, where we are working with so many organizations and congregations that want to be a part of Kalal Yisrael, of the community of Israel. So we're working in South Africa, we're working in Cameroon, we're working in Nigeria, we're working in Ghana, we're working in Kenya, we're working in Uganda, and yet there still are people in Ethiopia that we are working with. And yet we also have folks that are a part of the House of Israel that are very interested in other parts of East Africa. So for me, Zionism includes all of these people who see the ideals of what Israel stands for. And Israel stands for Kol Yisrael Harabim Zeh Bazeh, that all Israel is responsible for each other. and we are responsible for each other, not because of our ethnicity, but because of the faith that we share. The faith that we share is going to come up in another 46 days when we receive the Torah. We celebrate it at the time of Shavuot. Without Shavuot, Passover, Pesach, has no significance, because to be free without order, then you have anarchy. But what we have with Shavuot, the giving of the Torah, we're told in the Torah that every man, woman, and child that left out of Mitzrayim, out of Egypt, and Mitzrayim means that narrow place. All of those people that came out of that narrow place, the Torah tells us in two instances that there was an Erev Rav, a mixed multitude. And some of the rabbis would say that there were over 1 million people of this Erev Rav, of this mixed multitude that came out with Bnei Yisrael, with the children of Israel. And I would venture to say that they looked like every other people in the world. And so that Judaism is not about race. Zionism is not about race. They are about ideals, the ideals of peoplehood. And what connects us as a people is our experience at Sinai with the giving of what we call the Ten Commandments, or the words of the Eternal, the words of Hashem. So that's why we very much support the work of Herut here in America, and we also support the work of the World Zionist Organization. We think that it is imperative that our voices are heard, and that there is a seat or seats at the table for Jews of African descent in the Western Hemisphere, as well as on the continent of Africa. And oh yes, we also have communities in New Zealand and in Australia. And so, again, for me, Kol Yisrael Harabim Ze Bazeh, all Jews are responsible for each other, includes our brothers and sisters from the furthest most points of Europe, going to Spain, going to Portugal, going to South America, amongst the B'nai Anusim. We are all a part